what it is, so that they got.
And you're not going to present it to me?
Yes, I don't think there's going to be. Read through the whole thing. Yes, yes. And you notice, I just put that in there, a blanket statement, nothing more than.
Well, do you need extra copies of this, or?
No, that's it, that's my last one. Oh, this was, they sent us some five, say they did.
All of them.
How hard did you work for this?
There it is, just speed. It's not, this is.
I repeat, I'm not contagious.
Is that going into the record?
Yes, I've had 2 rounds of antibiotics.
See, those are all resolutions. He sits legally. Have an excuse for not making these changes. Process
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have a public hearing before the City of Cortland Common Council meeting. This public hearing is on the new proposed local law on zoning changes. And we have a couple of people who are signed up and who would like to speak. We ask that comments are limited to 3 minutes in time. Please use the microphone at the podium and address them to the council. Our first speaker, Tom Larson. Slide it towards you.
Did this before, I think that, we had that one. Members of council and Mayor Tobin, thanks again for offering to have the public hearing. I'm here to talk about specifically the Groton Avenue section and what I would term as upzoning that area, allowing more density. If you'll remember, through multiple public hearings that were held to solicit information from the community, that particular concept was paired with a concept of downzoning on West Court Street and elsewhere, where the objective was to protect existing residential housing. If that concept being the opposite of upzoning, when that was done away, I think it forces us to revisit upzoning an area and why that's happening. If the area of Groton Avenue were proposed for redevelopment in the course of zoning and allowing a bonus density to occur in that area, I'd be all for that, because then you would have some control over the structures that are there, largely slum-looking properties, which would then not be required to have any improvements done to them and allowed, and thus would have them to be allowed to have more density and higher incomes. I don't see how that benefits the city unless it's paired with some other comprehensive zoning action that protects neighborhoods from rampant student housing, like was originally proposed. So I express that I'm opposed to that one element of the zoning. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Tom. Our second speaker, Jim Reyners.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to bring this before you. I've taken the opportunity to prepare a short list of changes that the Housing Committee feels are necessary to the proposed new document. Many of these things are obvious. Some of them are words that were left out. Other things are earlier changes that were proposed, and when Engels made the change, they either misinterpreted or just didn't look close enough. And for one instance, dealing with a residential rental sign, it was supposed to be no higher than 6 feet above grade. They put in 6 inches. To me, that was just clearly some kind of an oversight. So there's a list of things here. I agree with Tom, by the way, but my disagreement with the student housing density overlay district is that there was far too little local input, and if there was, it wasn't from the right people. That is the narrowest entrance to our city, or exit, depending upon, hopefully it's more of an entrance to people. It is by far the narrowest one of the 4 major avenues into this city. To put a higher density student population in that area would, in my estimation, be a calamity. We observe what high density student housing, whether they're legal or not, how these properties look, and the way the environment of the behavior. And believe me, I was a college student. I was probably worse than most of them. But the point is, that is the reality of what exists in a college community. And to stick it on that highway where it's already hazardous because of the many driveways in and out, and the pedestrians and the restaurants and the businesses and everything that is there. I'm not saying we may not need a higher density student area, but I don't think anywhere near enough time was spent to determine where that area should be. And just because it's convenient to downtown and campus doesn't mean it has to be where it is. You go to the University of Binghamton that my son attended, and their fraternity was downtown. You know, I don't think it would be bad for us to revisit this, but make it more helpful to the community and not a potential detriment. Okay, and that's the way I feel about that. But at any rate, if you'll read these, hopefully you'll discuss these, and they're pretty short and fast. I made it out in a way that you can clearly see these various things and decide whether you want to move with it or not. It's much easier to make these changes before you pass the document, other than having to hit them one by one or with separate public hearings or whatever might be necessary after the fact. Typos and things of that nature, I think, can be done by resolution, but some of these other things, because the mistake creates an egregious change, even though it wasn't meant to be that way, like the 6 feet for 6 inches, they would have to probably have another public hearing. So my suggestion is that you try to look through these things, come up with makes sense to you. These all made sense to the Housing Committee, but we're not you. So it's up to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Next speaker, Abby Cleary.
Good evening. I'm Abby Cleary. I'm here as a Ward 2 resident this evening. I'd like to ask Common Council to consider removing the high-density overlay from the zoning plan as it stands. In and of itself, it's not a bad concept, but given its current location and current conditions in the area of Portland, in the area for which it's intended, it doesn't really seem to make sense anymore. I remember, because I did go to a number of those sessions with Matt Ingalls and his consultants, that when he proposed that, or when he and his group proposed it, they did it in conjunction with a second overlay that would limit housing in the neighborhoods closest to campus. The expectation was that by limiting housing near the college, students would need to look in new areas for new housing options. Mr. Ingalls and his planners envisioned the development of brand new housing complexes. I remember talking to him about this because I didn't understand what he was proposing with those high densities. When he explained it to me at the time, it made sense, and he explained it to a number of people. I wasn't the only one who was there. But what they envisioned was that the new students needing to look for housing in new areas would drive new economic development in those areas in the form of new housing. Essentially, they envisioned what's there being torn down and new complexes going up. And in those complexes, they would be able to locate storefronts with services and the things that would be attractive to not just students, but to young professionals coming into the community. Currently, without that other overlay district, the one district standalone probably will not work. I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to where I was in my notes here. There's no reason to believe, given the current situation in Cortland, that developers would be interested in coming in and developing these kinds of complexes. We already have a glut of student housing, I'm told, many vacancies right now in different houses are unfilled and complexes. Not sure where the stores would be coming from. There's no market study that suggests that we have the kind of businesses, or we're able to attract and provide the clientele for the businesses that might locate in such complexes. There's also the issue of parking. Even within that envisioned new zone that the Ingalls Company designed, they didn't really talk about the fact that there's limited space there and where parking was going to go to accommodate all those extra cars that were going to come with all of the extra occupants in those buildings. I can tell you that neighbors in my area are concerned that the higher density overlay, as it's currently proposed, would simply allow landlords to put even more students into the existing deteriorating structures and cause more parking issues and code violation problems. In short, that it will simply contribute to the deterioration of that area instead of improving that area, which was the original intent of that overlay in conjunction with the other. The other thing that has come up in neighborhood discussions is people have wondered how such a high-density area and more cars and traffic would impact things as we turn to two-way traffic on Main Street, and wondered if anybody has thought about that. So in short, I would like to ask Council to consider putting the high-density overlay district on hold to be considered perhaps at a later time and in a more appropriate location. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Joe Schaefer. Happy New Year.
Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. Nice to see you back, Tom. I'm not going to add very much to the previous speakers who have been very articulate and passionate and informed about this particular item. I have one or two items about that I'd like to add to it. I've been reading more and more about the smaller populations that colleges now are having more and more difficulty getting students, and that to increase the ability of student housing and poor housing, in fact, the matter, is really very distressing to me to see our efforts being turned to turning an area into a specific targeted population To me, that's not what we look about when we look at our democratic kind of involvement within the city, to target a specific area or a specific kind of person. You've all had your difficulties with that kind of person. I think they are people, and I think they need to be respected, but we need to give them a proper environment in which to live and to enjoy the community. A couple of things. One is, it's not a question of the parking so much as if you read it, it says there shall be one parking space for each unit, and then they put in 5 people. So that even in the description of this overlay district, they have not made provision for parking. All the other places say that there has to be a certain amount of parking for everybody in a unit in a rental area. This is one area which they've overlooked even doing that. So you can't put 5 people into an apartment and provide 1 space. I mean, it's going to be incredible. I can see the fights now. I was there first, no, you're after me, whatever. So those are basically the kinds of things that I want to say. The other thing is, I know that there will be consideration of the entire zoning package, which has been before you any number of times. My understanding of, you can approve that entire package. You can't increase it to improve it, but you can deduct something from it and reserve it for consideration for future addition to it. That's a standard thing in Robert's rules. You can always reduce a resolution, you can't increase it. So I want to give you a little movement that you can have in making this go forward. I want to thank Jim for making those corrections. I would like to add one more correction that came on this, which was your definitions. Please learn how to spell dormitory. I really find as a teacher that I really want to see this item as being in proper English and good grammar. Most of the other things have been corrected, but the dormitory is not spelled that way. If you take a look at it, do you see it? The very first word of the correction. Yes, okay, it's not just me, right? Okay. The other thing is, I saw the picture of the Cortland Standard of the space that you're looking at for this overlay district, and I was very distressed by it. I'm a visual person. I see things in terms of visual relationships. There are restaurants, there are a couple of buildings, and there were 4 houses on one side, 2 more houses up, and those houses are not kept up in the best of conditions. If I were trying to promote the city and this particular overlay and show that picture that you took, or the Cortland Standard took on the front page, I would be distressed. This is not where I would want to put my child if he was going to school, or she was going to school. This is not an area that I would consider appropriate for an overlay district. I would ask that you take consideration of the people from the Housing Committee. We have been meeting on this issue. It's still a major concern of ours, and that you withhold that particular section from the acceptance of the other zoning considerations, because I know that most of them are in good condition and they're fine and ready to go, and we should have them in place. But the overlay district is one that needs to be reconsidered, and I urge you to remove it from the consideration in the near future until we have some sort of consensus about what we really want for that particular area of Cortland. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. That concludes the people who have signed up for the public hearing. Is there anybody present that did not have the opportunity to sign up? Hearing none, seeing none, we will call the public hearing officially closed. And we will call the meeting of January 15, 2019, City of Cortland Common Council meeting to order. If you're able to, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comments, we have one individual signed up for public comments. Ann Doyle, do I need to read the rules to you?
First of all, I guess I better say I missed out on a lot of stuff not coming for the last few times. I gotta get back on the trail again because on all the things that I'm hearing tonight, holy crow. My first sentence of what I want to say to you is Lincoln Ave is becoming a slum. And I don't like that. That's my street. I'm trying to keep watch over the empty houses where the kids have all gone home because we last last break, we had, I think, 4 burglaries and some destruction in one of the houses. So I look out, excuse me, I don't sleep very good at night, so I look out several times, and sometimes I call the police. And one of the things that I wanted to say, or that I've written here, is last year we had 3 to 5 burglaries on Lincoln Ave and 3 or 4 on Maple and Groton. Nobody even told me, and I said to one of the officers when they came, I should tell the people, we have less than 10 families that live on Lincoln Ave now. And I said I should tell people that are having burglaries so that they'll watch. They said, well, you better not do that. And I said, why not? Don't you think it'd be nice if they knew it? I mean, a lot of the people that live on my street, not me, a lot of the other ones are old. And they need to know that so they're not frightened. So, and know that somebody's watching out. Anyway, I realize that there are also other streets that have the same problems, but I am very annoyed. I cannot seem to get the police to do what I want them to do. Sometimes they come and sometimes they don't. And I want them to come when I call them. And I have to tell you, I spoke to Chief Catalano about this morning, because it's not right to come and complain without telling him first that I'm going to. That's the way I feel about it. I've called many times before, and when there are problems, and usually they listen to what I am saying to them, and one of the things that I have done before this is called the regular number, which I found out today is the wrong place to call. So I just wanted to have you realize that Lincoln Ave isn't the only one, and I know that. But this is my town. Lincoln Ave is my street. I've lived there 60 years. And it didn't look like it does now, I'll tell you that, when I was a kid. I mean, it was all families. Everybody knew everybody, and that. I know it's not like that anymore, but the fact of the matter is, you need to know I'm gonna be back here every time from now on, so get ready. And you guys too.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
That concludes public comments for this evening. Mayor's report. There's times in city government where we recognize different milestones for employees, and tonight we have the opportunity to recognize a couple of milestones for 2 different departments in particular. We're going to start off, we have a new hire in our police department, Chief Catalano. Can you come forward and introduce?
First of all, I did talk to Ann this morning. We have a long history.
Yes,
She was crying today. We talked. This introduction of our newest officer, Bradley Lehman, is more specifically for the Common Council. The mayor requested quite some time ago, why don't we introduce our new officers to at least the Common Council? And I said, that's great, but we have to wait for them to get through basic police academy, because that's not always a feat that is accomplished. In this case, it was accomplished. We started the hiring process with Brad early summer, and he just graduated from the Syracuse Police Academy on Friday.
He's here, he's working.
He just graduated on Friday, and he's starting his field training program, which consists of
something I might want to share with a new officer. I remember doing a ride-along one night, and we had received a call on North Church Street. And our car was headed north with our sirens on. At the same time, we were passed by a car headed south. And the officer I was with said, well, that's one of our newbies. They're still learning north and south. So good luck.
Good. I'm going to come back to the minutes because the next item on our agenda is in line with what we are doing right now. And we have the swearing in of a new firefighter and a couple other things to do with some volunteers. So I'll ask Chief Glover if you can come forward with our new firefighter, if you can introduce, and then we'll do the swearing in after the introduction.
As Chief Catalano said, a couple of years ago, the mayor asked us to bring new hires to the common council, meet them. Because Pablo is so new, because you gave me permission back in December that you hire Pablo, he is the culmination of that hiring process. I just wanted to give a little background information on Pablo. Pablo joined the Cortland Fire Department several years ago as a volunteer. And in those first 2 or 3 years, he received numerous awards and recognition for his activity, participation, and dedication. After that, he spent some time in our bunker program. Was very well received by the crew as a bunker. There came a time when he moved out of district and he had to resign from the fire department. However, he remained busy. During that course of absence, he worked with the Homer Fire Department. He spent some time with the Homer Fire Department, pursued certification as paramedic, which was 15 months, along with 1,000 hours of clinical time. And on top of that, he put himself through the basic fire academy, so I don't have to send him to the fire academy. We'll be able to put him to work here within the next few days. So with that, Pablo Anderchuk is our newest hire, and welcome aboard, and we're going to get him officially sworn in.
I, Pablo Anderchuk,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties of firefighter
the duties of firefighter
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Welcome aboard. Would you like to do an introduction?
The next group, we're going to develop the fire police and the volunteer chief
I have
officer.
broken into 2 groups. If you
You want to do it in 2 groups? Okay, we can do it in 2 groups. So if I could ask all the fire police are peace officers under the Constitution of the State of New York, and therefore they have to be sworn in. These volunteers spend numerous hours on calls to sweet up the first step when they have things like baby staff, or wires, whatever. You guys spend countless hours and with dedication to them to overstate. Thank you, guys. Get them sworn in.
Very good, sizable group. Everybody can come forward. Council, if you want to be there, put your backs together. And we'll be along the same line. So I say the name, and you say the name.
officers, Rich Allen, Charlie Sherman, and Scott Fairbanks is already up here. These gentlemen are, through their years of service and training, have been elected by their peers to serve as volunteer chief officers. They assist the fire department with fire ground management, as well as management of volunteer personnel, and they spend countless hours helping us maintain and keep the group all together. Thank you for your service.
We've got a full agenda, but these are important details. These are things that keep the city moving, having people serving in official, professional capacity, and also having volunteers putting their time and efforts to help the citizens of our community. So while they're finishing up with the book, I'll ask council for approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Do we have a motion to consider filing the minutes? John Bennett, second. Bill Carpenter, discussion regarding the minutes. Are there any issues or concerns? Hearing none. Entertain a vote to file the minutes as is. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? File the minutes. So at this point, if council approves, we would like to, at the end of the meeting, adjourn into executive session for an update on contractual negotiations. No action is considered full. Not anticipating any action to be taken after executive session. That means with approval, give council an update. And I have a proclamation that I pushed down and ties in nicely with our first agenda item. January is National Mentoring Month. So whereas the goals of National Mentoring Month are to raise awareness of mentoring, recruit individuals to mentor, and encourage organizations to engage and integrate quality and mentoring into their efforts. The mentor is a caring, consistent presence who devotes time to a young person, to help that person discover personal strength and achieve their potential through a structured and trusting relationship. Quality mentoring encourages positive choices, promotes self-esteem, supports achievement, and introduces people to new ideas. And mentoring programs have shown to be effective in combating school violence, discipline problems, substance abuse, incarceration, and truancy. And research shows that people who were at risk for not completing high school, but who did have a mentor, were 55% more likely to be enrolled in college, 81% more likely to report participating regularly in sports or extracurricular activities, and more than twice as likely to say that they held a leadership position in a club or sports team, and 78% more likely to volunteer regularly in their communities. So mentors help young people set career goals and use their personal contacts to help young people meet industry professionals and find jobs. And all of the above listed benefits serve to link youth to economic opportunity while also strengthening the fiber of our communities. And whereas despite these benefits, 1 in 3 youth will reach age 19 without a mentor, which constitutes a mentoring gap that demonstrates a need for collaboration and resources. And in Cortland County, there are children who are on a waiting list who could use an adult mentor. So, I, Brian Tobin, Mayor for the City of Cortland, hereby proclaim January of 2019 as National Mentoring Month in Cortland. and I urge the residents of our community and communities to recognize the men and women who shall serve as staff and volunteers, acknowledge that mentoring is beneficial, promote the creation and expansion of quality mentoring programs, and support initiatives to close the mentoring gap now and throughout the year. So we can go right from our proclamation into our first agenda. We have Mindy is here to present Mentoring Month. She is an employee over at the YWCA. Mindy, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Common Council. I am Mindy Gardner, and it is my pleasure to tell you about the YWCA Bridges for Kids mentoring program. It began in 1980 as the Coalition for Children. It was born as an offshoot of the Aid to Victims of Violence program. In their work with victims, AVV advocates found that children growing up in a climate of violence and conflict are likely to fall prey of a cycle of violence and grow up to be the next generation of victims and abusers. The goal of this new mentoring program was to provide positive adult role models and have mentors build trusting relationships with children who have experienced the stress of violence in their homes. Today, the name has changed, but the goal remains the same. Some children in the program come from homes that are experiencing stress due to economic hardships or domestic violence. Children are still matched as a one-to-one relationship with a trained adult who provides enrichment activities designed to increase the child's self-esteem, self-confidence, as well as resiliency skills. The program has expanded to provide some group mentoring to counteract the shortage of individual adult mentors. We have a total of 175 children in Cortland enrolled in the program ages 5 to 12. Only 80 of them have an individual mentor that meets on a regular basis, and 50 of them are involved now with our new group mentoring in various areas. The program relies on this incredible community to come forward and break the cycle of generation poverty and violence. We do have a few children currently that were part of our program who are now enrolled in either TC3 or a different college. Some of them go to SUNY Cortland right here locally, and they're pursuing different careers and paths that they have found thanks to their mentor really guiding them and helping them get there. Currently, we have a young girl who is part of our GEMS group mentoring, which is our Girls Empowered, Motivated, and Successful group. She's 15 years old. She attends Homer High School, and she is really interested in photography. She was chosen this month to be our spotlight artist at the YWCA in our art gallery. The Arts Council hosts the first Friday. I'm sure many of you are aware of this, that different various locations have a different artist, and these are real artists that get chosen. She was chosen this month to display her artwork, so please stop by the YW and check out all of her photography. It's very amazing. A few of our activities that we do as mentors include field trips to things like the Ithaca Children's Garden or the zoo. We took the GEMS group of girls over to TC3 to check it out and check out the campus. They were very excited. They're 14, 15 years old, and now they have new goals set in their life. The mentors also take their children tubing at Greek Peak, or even just going together to go grab something to eat locally. Since January is National Mentoring Month, it is important for all of you to hear that it is not just the job of your neighbor or one specific person. Mentoring is the job of a community. It breaks the cycle of violence and poverty. A community that can work together, build a better tomorrow. I often hear, I wouldn't even know what to do with a child, or I barely have the time. But all Bridges for Kids program asks for is anyone 18 and older who's willing to share their time and give 2 hours a week and make a huge change in our local community. These children really want to just be a part of our community and not stuck into poverty. Simply sharing a meal, shooting a basketball, or coloring can impact them and help them break out of where they are. The success stories are here. They're right here locally. We just need more of them. So here at the YWCA, thousands of children have been involved in this program in the past 39 years. It is our hope and our belief that lives have been impacted for the better. You can contact me, Mindy Gardner, at the YWCA at 607-753-9651, or you can just visit our website too. Thank you so much for your time, and go out and be a mentor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you for the work that what you're doing. Agenda item number 2, resolution, consideration of resolution to approve the new proposed local law on the zoning changes with motion to consider. Katie Silliman, second. Bill Carpenter, discussion.
You heard from people on the Housing Committee tonight. Sadly, there are other people who are concerned, but who are, for some reason, intimidated by talking in front of council. So, it is our hope that we can either take out the piece about the high-density district for now, or amend zoning after we pass it tonight. I appreciate the urgency. It's been a while. We paid for it. We paid Matt Engel's group for it. We need to be reimbursed for our grant. But I do think that this should be considered in depth before we go ahead with the high-density district.
So this is, and I've traded a couple emails with Katie, but I do disagree with a couple of members of the Housing Committee about this specific topic. Because if you go back and you look at the city's comprehensive plan, which we passed, was it 2014, it does designate areas for the potential growth and development of higher density. And part of the rationale for that, and the Housing Committee was involved in that discussion as well. Part of the rationale for that is that we've never said this is where we think higher density can and should be. And on campus, college students at SUNY Cortland in suites can live in groups of 4, they can live in groups of 6, and then when it's time to move off campus, our 3 unrelated losses, if you're not functioning as a family, you're limited to 3. And that, I think, is part of the problem in terms of the issue with overpopulation, in terms of some types of rentals in certain neighborhoods and on some streets. And the safety issue that was brought forward, I agree that there's a number of properties that should not be rentals to college students. We had a property last year that was up to code. However, with a large number of occupants, there was an issue. And I think we've been fortunate that we've not had a severe injury or worse in terms of one of these properties. When Ann Doyle talks about a number of properties being vacant, I think one large structure is much easier to secure than several smaller houses. So the idea of having a new structure that would allow for higher density, and if it's city property, it definitely would take into account parking. We've had discussions about a parking garage or a parking deck. At this point, there's no real way for the city to move forward without a parking. And in terms of a parking lot and doing something more with that, that makes sense to me. If we were able to do something that would increase parking to alleviate the increase in terms of dwelling units in one area. So it's a little one way, a little the other way, but
With the comprehensive plan, that was a concern because it took Groton, Main Street, and Tompkins. And that is basically putting a horseshoe around the whole neighborhood. So much of our development in the city has been towards maximizing student dollars. And I fear that if we continue in that vein, Main Street will continue to develop toward students and how they spend their money. And certainly they're an important part of our community, but we have so many full-time residents who live here and don't come down to Main Street, who don't feel that there's much for them on Main Street. So in addition to increased foot traffic over the hill, which often these days, that's what wakes people up at 2 in the morning. And it's hard for the police to pin down because they're moving around. In addition to that very serious concern, in addition to, for instance, over the break, we've had cars that have been broken into on the hill. Neighbors have been talking about it, because when you have a large student population, and I'm not convinced that having a high-density district would cut down on the number of houses on the hill that continue to try to rent towards students. When you have a large number of houses that are empty, then predictably, we get people kind of walking around the neighborhood that we haven't seen before. We have more crime, like Ann was talking about. I think as a city, we really need to think about how we want to develop more for all of the residents. And this could be, you know, a high-density district. I'm not against it. I'm not in favor of the application. Matt Inklesbrook, he was a great guy. He had a lot of what I would consider pie-in-the-sky ideals. One of them was to promote more bicycling, which is why there was only going to be one parking space per 5 people in an apartment. But if you look at Portland, given our climate and the fact that kids would be biking in the snow in the wintertime, that seems kind of unlikely. So I think also originally the idea was to tear down existing structures and rebuild with businesses on the first floor, but are those businesses, if students are in the second and third floors, are those businesses going to just cater more towards students? I think we could give it more thought, and certainly people in my ward are concerned. So I would like to take it out.
I don't think council is against some kind of an overlay district. I don't think we're there yet. I like the concept of possibly developing new structures to replace aging ones, and that may give other landlords the incentive to upgrade their properties to match the new structures, instead of leaving them dormant just to place more students in there. I'm thinking maybe perhaps come back with maybe a smaller version of the overlay district to start with, and kind of build from there. That's just my opinion.
Also, Mayor, that structure that failed, that was up to code but failed, that wasn't due to over-occupation, that was because they had a massive party on the back deck, right? Which they'll do regardless. They're not looking at, you know, what their house is set up for when they're inviting people over. Those parties tend to mushroom because of social media, as we know.
Which is why some of the off-campus housing, I think, currently is inappropriate. Because it might be appropriate for a single family, the house was in good shape. However, depending on who the tenant is and how they treat it, and the idea of housing that is geared towards the student population makes sense.
But then we'd be encouraging developers to build with the idea that they could have 50 people on a deck. And I don't think we want that necessarily. If we're building for a student housing population, just, my concern is just because students want to live in close proximity to the college doesn't mean that they're what they want or what the people making money off of them want should come before the interests of the people who live here year-round and own their properties. They may not have extended investments in properties, but they've invested in their own properties. And to them, that's everything. And to have a neighborhood with people who are your neighbors, who you talk to, who you share, you know, conversation and things with. transport, they don't want to lose theirs.
Well, the sense that I think everybody here tonight, certainly is people that spoke was most of it was the overlay district.
Yeah,
And I think,
otherwise,
right. So
yeah.
I personally think if there's a way we can pull that out and move forward with the rest of it, or, you know, I guess that would be, recommend we do it, I feel comfortable with.
Could we do that, Rick?
I don't recommend that policy, but as a legal matter, if someone would simply make an amendment to remove that from the zoning proposal, and there's a second, and there's a vote on the amendment, it would come out. And then you can vote on what's left.
Okay.
What's our other option, other than leave it the way it is? Is there any other option?
Or to vote it down entirely, the zoning.
I don't want to do that. So I can make an amendment. Do we have to back out of the amendment to consider it first?
No, just make the amendment.
I'd like to make an amendment that we pull out the overlay district and then vote on what's left.
The overlay district.
I'm sorry, the high-density district, the overlay district was already pulled out. The high-density at the end of Groton, where it left me.
Student housing density overlay district.
Yes, thank you.
Referencing page 53. So we need to, that would officially qualify as a motion to, correct? And then we need support, so we need a second. Bill Carpenter, and then discussion. Specifically to removing this section.
Keeping in mind that we can always bring it back
Yeah.
in other forms.
Yes.
I think that's what we're
It's
at.
always a work in progress.
That's kind of where we're at now. Is
Yeah.
the housing committee gonna come back with some recommendations perhaps later on?
We could, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Further discussion? Hearing none, this is the vote on the amendment, correct? Not on the total. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So the vote on the amendment carries 5-0. And any further discussion regarding agenda item number 2? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving as is with the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0.
There was a change that we asked to make.
There have been, before I move on to the next agenda item, there have been discussions about some other recommendations, and as it was referenced, zoning is not a static document. It can continue to change. The big concern in terms of moving forward with tonight's agenda item is that we did receive a grant to cover the cost of this. We've outlaid the money and we need to close out the grant. But we can and we will come back and continue to address zoning as needed. So agenda item number 3, consideration of a resolution to accept, recognize, and appropriate the following donations to youth bureau. A donation to go to the parks from Beverly Ellison. Motion to consider. John Bennett, second. Katie Silverman, discussion. Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries. Agenda item number 4, consideration of resolution to authorize the City of Cortland to participate in the 2019 Shared Services Grant with the County of Cortland and the Town of Portlandville through the New York State Archives Local Government Records Management Improvement Fund for the amount of $150,000. $50,000 will be to pay for storage of the digital records, and the remaining funds will be divided 3 ways and used to scan records. Motion to consider. Bill Carpenter, second. Katie Silverman, discussion.
I'm so pleased, this is a much-needed grant.
Who's gonna manage the grant?
For the city? The records management officer will be primarily dealing with the practical application. And again, this is pursuing the grant, so this is assuming that we get it. However, yeah, I'll come back to the city clerk.
We get assistance from Brooke Knickerbocker at the Cortland County Clerk's Office, who manages.
Various city commissions,
me go through this and then I'll ask for a motion to consider. So for the Board of Assessments, 5-year term, Ginny Jones and Gerald O'Rourke. On the Cable Commission, Jim Forshee. Fire Commission, Bonnie Heath, Bill Starr. Historic and Architectural, Linda Klein, Richard Stock. Landscape and Design, Diane Batsing, Paul Paradine. Planning Commission, Jim Wobble and Jeff Gebhardt. On the Police Commission, all three, Patricia Hansen, James Sponigal, Eric Pryor. Public Safety, William Doty and Bill Stark. Wastewater, Diane Potter. And finally, the Youth Bureau, Thomas Steele, Christina Gambetta, Christella Yanta, and Allison Ventimilla. Motion to consider appointees. John Bennett, second. Bill Carpenter, discussion.
Thank you for your service.
Absolutely. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. And consideration of resolution to approve the appointment of Brian Deem and Joshua Legas to the examining board of plumbers for a 3-year term. Motion to consider. John Bennett, second. Bill Carpenter, discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
You're in favor? Does this mean I might go somewhere now, Bill?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Excuse me. Motion passes, 5 in favor. Agenda item number 7, consideration of a resolution to approve the appointment of Richard Stock to the County Legislative District 6 to finish up the term of Mary Ann DeSenza. Motion to consider. John Bennett, second. Katie Silliman, discussion.
Why would he ever want to get into that pit of snakes? Oh, did I say that in public?
We have Mr. Stock is present this evening. If anybody, Richard, would you like to address?
Yes, first I'd like to thank the Common Council for putting me forth, and also the committee that recommended me. And I look forward to working with my constituents and the county. And I'm quite an advocate for helping our seniors as well, so I hope it covers everybody. You know, I gotta wait for you guys to say yes, and then I can smile. But I'm on the historical downtown. You know, I helped initiate the Cortland Community Center. You know, I've been I was on the zoning thing. You know, I hope nobody holds that against me. And I'm on the environmental for the brownfield presently. So.
Thank you for stepping forward.
Any further questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Now officially. He has to sign a book, but he has to sign a different book, correct?
Yes.
We don't sign a book anymore, but I am here to swear in Mr. Stock this evening so that we can put him right to work.
Wow.
Richard, what do you say? Ready to come forward? Mr. Mulvihill, ladies and gentlemen, this is Eric Mulvihill, the clerk for the Cortland Common Legislature. It's like we're gonna start here.
Mr. Stock, would you raise your right hand, please, and repeat after me? That's good. On the right foot already. I, Richard Stock. I, Richard Stock. Do solemnly swear. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution. Will support the Constitution of the United States. Of the United States. The Constitution of the State of New York. The Constitution of the State of New York. And will faithfully discharge the duties. Discharge the duties of the Legislative District Number 6. Of the Legislative District Number 6. In and for the County of Portland. In and for the County of Portland. According to the best of my ability. According to the best of my abilities. Thank you.
Had the good fortune of knowing Mr. Stock for a little bit, and he has served this community well, and excited and enthusiastic about his opportunity to continue to serve the residents of the city. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
And we have another vacancy that City Council needs to address. So agenda item number 8, I'll call for a minor change to the resolution. Consideration of a resolution to approve the appointment of Kat McCarthy to fill the vacant first ward alderman position. Motion to consider. John Bennett, second. Katie Silliman. Just a little quicker. Just get his hand up. Second, Katie Silliman, discussion. And Kat McCarthy is present this evening as well.
I want to thank Michelle Mastropolo for the service that she did on council and for stepping down when she realized she could no longer fulfill her position. And we have 3 great candidates for this position. But I'm happy to welcome Kat to council.
Tonight's the first time I've had an opportunity to meet Kat. I guess, is there anything that you care to add that may sway me one way or the other to ensure that you're the person?
Well, good evening, and thank you for considering this resolution.
Take the mic.
Sorry. Good evening, and thank you for considering this resolution. I am relatively new to Cortland County. I moved here into the city 6 months ago, and prior to that, I had been living and working in Tompkins County. I spent about 10 years with Tompkins County as an employee, so I have a good understanding of local municipalities, and I've had a long history of volunteering in the community through environmental waste reduction, recycling and events, composting, as well as now I currently serve as the executive director of the culture of our community, if you so choose.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions, further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Congratulations, Kat. And once again, we've got a book that needs a signature. Before we do that,